and welcome to LACO's LCAP training. We want to thank you for joining us this morning. Today is day 2 of our 2-part LCAP training. We want to thank you for coming back to day 2. I am Adrienne Balcazar, and I would like to introduce the LCAP State and Federal Programs Unit. Joining us from the team is Helen Choi,
Good morning, everyone.
Laurel Estrada,
Good morning.
Augustine Garcia,
Good morning, everyone.
Rachel Garcia,
Hello, everyone.
Anita Lomali,
Good morning.
and Christiana Park.
Good morning, everyone.
Also joining us from our support staff is April Grease and Susanna Mendoza. We also want to welcome the Accountability and Data Literacy Unit, Evan Bartelheim and Dr. Hillary Weisman.
Good morning, everyone.
We also very happy to introduce to you Sean Lewis and Abrar Alam from the Business Advisory Services, who will be walking you through the fiscal components of the LCAP. You will also find the contact information for the Business Advisory Service Unit here on this slide. So welcome, everyone. To access today's presentation, we ask you to click on the link in the chat, and this will take you directly to the slides where you can download a copy. If you use the link at the top of the slide, this also will take you to our Canvas page. The presentation can be accessed through the icon as shown here, as well as the LCAP resources. We do ask you to place your questions in the chat box, and we will answer any simple questions we can. If we can't, we will further research, and we will be following up with a written response in the Q&A that will be emailed to everyone here. We are also recording today's training and will post this on our webpage. For those of you that were not able to join us for day 1 on January 14th, we went over the required components of the 2627 LCAP template and how to approach your LCAP in year 3 of the 3-year cycle. We covered the sections of the 2627 LCAP through the lens of continuous improvement. We also provided the links to CDE's Tuesday at 2 webinar series to provide support to those of you who are new to the development of the LCAP. You can find the video and PowerPoint presentation posted on our Canvas page at the link on slide 6. So for today's workshop, we will be covering the metrics table tool, local indicators, the action tables, the budget overview for parents, LCAP development and approval process, the LCAP submission, and for those of you that are using our eLCAP system, we ask you and invite you to stay to go over the eLCAP overview. And now I will turn it over to Evan, who's going to take a deeper look at the key metrics.
Thank you, Adrienne. And yeah, we are now heading into the 3rd year of the 3-year LCAP cycle. So most of your metrics are probably set, but it's always worth revisiting what they are, what they should be, and especially if you're new to the LCAP process, understanding why the metrics that we have are chosen. Next slide, please. So the first key thing to remember is that this is an overview of the metrics, and you'll note that the metrics are correlated to the 8 state priority areas required in the LCAP, which are organized around the conditions for learning, engagement, and student outcomes to support a whole child development. And LEAs are required to address each of the 8 priorities, and these reflect the minimal required metrics that are required in the LCAP. Next slide. So one thing we want to stress as we head into both this section discussion of the local indicators is that it's really important to streamline things and not duplicate your efforts, right? To the extent possible, the work that goes into identifying your data, your measures, and your tools to track local indicators, as well as the evaluation reflection, which should inform the LCAP, it's important to keep it as simple as possible. That's both for your sanity and for your readers and your community members and your educational partners. So to the extent possible, don't duplicate. Just keep things simple. Next slide. So we have created this metric inventory. We've had it for a couple of years. We actually have changed slightly. We actually decided rather than just keep changing the same document, we developed a folder. And in that folder, you'll actually find the new 25-26 required metrics inventory, but also the prior years. And that's just in the event that something changes and you may be inheriting an LCAP wondering, why did they choose this metric, or why did they choose to use this calculation instead of something else? Because things have changed over the years. But that link will take you to a folder, and if it's the new inventory you're looking for, that's marked as new. Everything else is marked as archived. And within the older versions, if you had a link saved somewhere, we have a link that'll take you back to the folder. We also have the local indicators tool that Hillary will discuss in just a little bit. That's also in that folder. And the value of this metrics inventory is it includes not just the description of the options you can use for your metrics, but also the specific ed code that's referenced in terms of the decision that those will be in there, as well as the available data sources. And if there's any special considerations, and these are the areas that kind of change year over year, where you like, make special notes about some of the complications in generating these metrics. Next slide, please. So we'll touch on some of the more tricky measures. The first we want to talk to is this priority one. This is in the LCAP, appropriately assigned and fully credentialed teachers. And this is really, per the CDE, this source that you use in your LCAP is a local decision, right? And the measure asks for identifying the teachers are appropriately assigned and fully credentialed for their subject and their students. And at the same time, LEAs must also present their teacher assignment monitoring outcome data, the TAMO data, to their governing board as part of priority one local indicator. So here's going back to the keep it simple, right? You want to use both, but the tricky part is that for the 2026 dashboard, the data that will appear from TAMO is going to be the 24-25 data, and that's probably not going to be available. It has historically not been available at the time of the LCAP approval process. And so you can use either your older data, the 23-24 data, that's perfectly consistent, or if you're using an additional, some external source, as an example, CalSAS data, you can use that as well. That's up to your discretion, but just keeping in mind that there's a difference between what's allowed by the state and what's allowed under federal definitions of ineffective and out of field. So there might be a slight difference. We certainly would encourage you to use the TAMO data, just understanding that your LCAP, by the time the LCAP's published, you're not going to have the most current TAMO data that will ultimately appear on the dashboard. Next slide. A few of the other tricky metrics that we always like to point out, and these are outlined in the metrics inventory as well. It used to be tricky. I think everybody's aware of it now, but there's this metric that asks for the completers of both CTE pathways and A through G requirements, the combination. So students who've done both. But the CDE nicely added a report to the additional reports feature of the dashboard. If you're not aware of that, you should be, but it will give you the exact number of the students who met both criteria instead of you having to calculate it yourself. The reclassification rate, this remains kind of a stickler. The CDE has not published this rate for a long time. People continue to ask them, but it's not required. It's not statutorily required. And the CDE has kind of said, we just, with all the other requirements and the changing timelines of the dashboard publication, we just don't have time to calculate this. However, it can be calculated locally. They've agreed that, and our metrics inventory explains how you can do that using your own CalPADS metrics. And this is a totally acceptable, totally accurate measure. So that's, I would highly recommend taking a look at the metrics inventory to figure out how to calculate your own reclassification rate. Attendance rate, that's another one that's not published anywhere, but you can use your local SIS. Your P2 report is a good one. There is a CalPADS option for it, although it uses absenteeism, which arguably absenteeism and attendance are not the same thing. So, but you can look at that one as an option. Obviously, be consistent with what you've been using, but the other two may be easier to calculate. And then finally, the middle school dropout rate. This used to be a published indicator or published metric. It hasn't been published for quite a few years, but this too could be generated through CalPADS reports, and the description of how to get those are included in the inventory. Next slide. So just a reminder that disaggregating your data is always strongly encouraged. We're supposed to address all students, and the LCAP is designed to capture the efforts made to address any inequities and any gaps in opportunities in learning. And so now we're up to 14 student groups as identified by Ed Code 52052. That includes the most recent addition, the long-term English learners. So you have 6 programmatic groups and 8 race and ethnicity groups. And you may not have significant numbers of these, but to the extent possible, we certainly encourage you to disaggregate by as many significant student groups as you have. And that may, the count of those students may differ, because 3 of the programmatic groups, foster youth, homeless youth, and long-term English learners, they'll appear on your dashboard for accountability purposes, meaning you'll see a color for them. If you're at a district level, have 15 students or more in those student groups in both the prior year and the current year. So as to how you report out, that's certainly up to you, but I think these are good groups to include. Next slide, please. And specifically for long-term English learners, there's 2 definitions of long-term English learners that are still floating around out there. And to the extent that they you'll see them in 2 places, there's an older version that includes some additional details within the definition. The simpler version is the one that comes out of 52052, and that's a student who has not attained English language proficiency within 7 years of their initial classification as an English learner. And that's 2,557 calendar days. So either the first enrollment or the after they taking the initial LPAC, when it's determined that they are an English learner, 2,557 days pass, boom, they're an LTEL. And now the dashboard, of course, will provide you a lot of that data, but you'll also see LTELs as they appear on CASP data. Those are slightly different. That uses a different definition, just to be mindful of the difference that exists between who those students are. They're very, very close, but I think that the LTEL definition from 52052 captures more students. So just be mindful of that if you're disaggregating for that student group. Next slide, please. So just as an example, and this is actually relevant to all student groups, but I just want to highlight LTELs because they didn't appear until the 2024 dashboard. They presented a bit of a challenge in terms of reflecting them in the metric tables. So the first, in this case, we'll just follow along. And so you can see at bullet 1, the baseline data for most of the student groups, if you're reflecting the California dashboard English language arts academic indicator, was 2023. But because long-term English learners didn't appear on the dashboard till 2024, their actual baseline year was 2024. So last year in the year 1 outcomes, they would have been an NA because you would have included basically their 2024 results as part of the baseline data. But we've moved up now to year 2 outcomes, and now you can actually reflect a second year. So you would want to have them in this simulation here, the sample. We see that these students have moved up, significantly. The long-term English learner student group had a 20-point increase, and that is what you would capture in that current difference from baseline. So everything's going to be updated in that last column, the current difference from baseline for all your student groups. You're looking at the year 2 outcomes for all the students you had initially listed in your baseline, and you're going to look at the change from that original baseline. Next slide, please. And then just some final thoughts. There are a lot of different options for reflecting on different indicators. You have the choice of the dashboard or DataQuest, as well as CalPads. And these do differ somewhat. Well, your CalPads data is going to be consistent. The CalPads data is going to inform both the dashboard and DataQuest. But the important thing to remember is that the dashboard uses some business rules that exclude certain students or excludes certain grade spans. For example, chronic absenteeism is reflected as a K8 measure on the dashboard, TK through 8. And you can actually get a K12 or TK through 12 reflection of chronic absenteeism on DataQuest. So it's up to you what you want to reflect. And so if you're a unified school district, you may want to capture the chronic absenteeism as a metric using the entirety of the grade spans. And there is a crosswalk that exists. It's linked here that talks about the difference between DataQuest and the dashboard. In particular, it focuses on the graduation rate because those are some distinct differences between how they calculate the 4-year and the graduation rate, the cohort graduation rate for DataQuest, as well as compared to the dashboard 4- and 5-year combined graduation rate. And they do differ slightly, and they can tell a slightly different story. So using the LCAP metric inventory is a very helpful tool to understand those distinctions. Next slide, please. So I just want to hand it over to Dr. Weissman. She's my colleague, and she's going to talk about local indicators.
Alrighty, thank you, Evan, and good morning. I'm Hillary, as Evan said, within the Accountability and Data Literacy Unit. Happy Wednesday morning, and I think for the last time, it's appropriate to also say Happy New Year because I haven't seen most of you since the previous year. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about local indicators, timelines, processes, and data involved. And as Evan mentioned, at the end of this section, we'll have some updates to resource to support your data analysis and data considerations. So as we move along, as we know, a little bit of review for everyone, California's accountability system is based on a multiple measure system that assesses how local educational agencies and schools are meeting the needs of their students. Performance on these measures is reported through the California School Dashboard, which I'm just going to call the dashboard from here on out. And it includes a concise set of state indicators and local indicators that are founded on the local control funding formula priorities, but are also aligned to the measures required under Every Student Succeeds Act. Those LCFF priorities for which there is no state level data collected are referred to as local indicators. Take note on this slide to priority 9 and 10, which only apply to county offices of education and will not be discussed during this presentation. In addition to being a public record of progress on the dashboard, the local indicator process serves to inform the process and planning within the local control and accountability plan that we call the LCAP. Further progress in local indicators can inform technical assistance provided through the differentiated assistance process. As we move along, we'll see on this next slide a diagram that provides an overview of the local indicator timeline process with key points along the journey. At the beginning of this school year, between August and November, which has already kind of transpired, was the time to get reacquainted with local indicators, the self-reflection tools, and determine roles and responsibilities. Moving along, December through April is a time in which LEAs continue to collect evidence from local indicators. As the mid-year update is completed and prepared for school boards and governing bodies, there's been active analysis around your dashboard data, in addition to reviewing the actions, expenditures, and metrics. As we all know, local indicators offer robust information that's both timely and relevant, and it can also be extremely introspective, often influencing actions and services. It's important for the LEAs to connect with their local indicator process, to connect the local indicator process with their LCAP development process. The important tasks in this cycle of continuous improvement will be to analyze data determining needs and plan actions and services accordingly for the upcoming school year. LEAs will continue to adopt, adapt, or abandon actions and services as part of the PDSA cycle and goal analysis prompts. Moving along this timeline between May and June, but no later than the 1st of July, LEAs will report out findings from the local indicators to their local governing board or body as a non-consent agenda item. And this will be the same meeting where the 2026 and 2027 LCAP and budget will be presented for adoption. And during the summer of 2026, the LEA's dashboard coordinator, main, or alternate authorizer will upload the findings from their local indicators to the MyCD Connect website platform within the dashboard section. Keep in mind, after the local indicator window closes, LEAs will not be allowed to make any changes. Additionally, any LEA that does not report their local indicators to the governing board or body in conjunction with the adoption of its LCAP on or before July 1st, as I said, will receive a performance rating of standard not met, which is visible on the dashboard landing page. And in cases where an LEA is consecutively not reporting their local indicators, they will receive standard not met for 2 or more years. As we move along to the next slide, an LEA uses their State Board of Education adopted self-reflection tools to report its progress through the dashboard. The collection and reflection on locally available information relevant to progress regarding local priority areas will support LEAs in completing the self-reflection tools, reporting in the dashboard, and in local planning and improvement efforts. The 2025 self-reflection tools and performance standards for each local indicator can be found on the CDE webpage linked here on this slide. This page also provides a description of those local indicators, the applicable State Board of Education requirements, the self-reflection tools, and links to additional sources. Here you have the option if you'd like to download them individually or just kind of group them or cluster them together into a larger guide, whatever you'd like. When we start to look at annually measuring progress, this diagram here illustrates this annual process. The first step, as you can see here, is to become familiar with the local indicator requirements and self-reflection tools, as I've mentioned. This is the foundational understanding that's going to guide the identification of relevant data and help establish an effective process for data collection. During this data analysis phase, it's important to disaggregate data where appropriate to uncover meaningful insights. And in some instances, such as priority 3, parent and family engagement, it's essential to involve, as we all know, educational partners throughout this process. Their engagement should be carefully considered when planning activities and ensuring all deadlines are met. The findings from these activities should then be used to report progress, identify areas of need, and inform comprehensive planning within the LCAP. Excuse me. As we move along, the State Board of Education approved performance standards that we're familiar with for the local indicators that support local educational agencies in measuring and reporting progress within the appropriate priority area. As you can see here, the approved performance standards require an LAA to annually measure progress in meeting the requirements of a specific LCFF priority. Additionally, these results are to be reported, as I mentioned before, as part of a non-consent item at the same public meeting in which the LCAP is adopted by the local governing board, excuse me. And lastly, those results need to be reported and published to the public through the dashboard using the adopted self-reflection tools for each local indicator. As mentioned in a previous slide, but worthy of repetition, is the information on this slide. Providing an LEA satisfies the performance standards for each local indicator. As we've said, the dashboard will automatically assign a performance level of met. As we said before, if the LEA does not meet the performance standards, the dashboard will automatically assign the performance level of not met, or as I said, not met for 2 or more years as applicable. And just to reiterate, earning a performance level of not met for 2 or more years may be a factor in identification, is a factor for differentiated assistance. And I'm going to take a pause right here and I'm going to hand it over to Evan for the next several slides.
Thank you, Hillary. Yeah, if we could advance one slide, please. So this slide is really more about the how than the what, because you've already heard the what a couple of times. So you will have to report your local indicators or share your local indicators with your governing board at the same meeting the LCAP is adopted. That must occur before July 1st. And of course, the results of not defining that date as prior to July 1 would be that you would receive a performance rating of not met, or if it's been more than 1 year of doing this, not met for 2 or more years. The key here is that the dashboard system for reporting, MyCD Connect, which we'll talk a little bit more about, does allow you to put in a later date. And so what's happened in the past is that people have initially put in the date at which they're submitting. Sometimes you space out and you just put in something. So you want to make sure you capture that date accurately when you're putting it into the system, because the system's dumb. It'll allow you to put any date that you want in there. And if you put a date after July 1, they're going to ding you for it. Additionally, we highly recommend, just for transparency, that you actually list your local indicators on your agenda for that day separately. It just makes for clarity that in the event that something happens, and it has happened where we've had a change in leadership with the person who is submitting that data, and it's been very helpful to be able to go back during the process for submitting the data to see the exact, okay, it's clearly marked on the board agenda as a separate item for local indicators, and it has to be a non-consent item. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there's a tool, the dashboard. There's kind of intermediary. So you're going to upload the local indicators to the dashboard using a platform called MyCD Connect. It's a portal. And in order to have access to that, an LEA has to have identified a dashboard coordinator. By default, the superintendent receives access. They're the main authorizer, or charter school administrator. They're identified as the main authorizer, and they're the ones who would approve the dashboard coordinator. There's also an option for identifying an alternate authorizer. So you can have multiple roles for this, and all all of these folks would be able to upload and complete the local indicator process. And really what it is, it's a reflection. You'll see the tools that are reflected in the self-reflection tools for the local indicators appear in an online form, and you just basically fill those out, and any narrative that you're including goes into narrative boxes. So you have to get the dashboard coordinator. The tricky part is every year they purge the dashboard coordinator roles, and this happens in August, and then they ask for reauthorization of dashboard coordinators, and hopefully your LEA has identified a dashboard coordinator, unless you're the main authorizer and you also do all this work. But if not, I've recently asked. I have a dashboard coordinator list, but it's a little dated. It's back from September because we did some outreach around September for uploading last year's published LCAP. And so there may have been some changes. And so I'm hoping to get from CDE in the next few days an updated list. But if you don't know who that person is, who your dashboard coordinator is, you can always reach out to us and we'll check. Or you can just go log in and submit. If you've already filled all the roles, the platform will tell you these roles have already been filled. And part of the challenge is sometimes people leave and they're still taking up a role. So that'll have to go through the main authorizer to purge any names that are dated. Next slide, please. And so the timeline has not been specified yet last year, so we're going on based on last year's expectations. The portal opens up for submission of the local indicators in early June typically, and then closes in early August. So last year it was June 2nd to August 2nd, right? So right now we don't have exact dates, but those will be published soon by the LCFF office at CDE. And the key is you got to get everything in kind of right the first time, because once it's submitted, you can't go back and change things. And this has been a problem sometimes where something gets submitted prematurely. So best practice is probably to have everything on a separate document that you can copy and paste directly in. And so you're not trying to fill it out, entering it as you're in the platform, just in case you lose power or something like that. So make sure, again, you want to get the date that they were shared with the local governing board accurate. And you want to get that information in the first time. Also, I'd note that there is a field that's available that's just an optional narrative box that's available to dashboard coordinators that they can fill out at any time if there's like extenuating circumstances, like if your school is affected by the fires, things like that, that's open, and that appears on the front page of the dashboard that's open year round, right? So you can make amendments, and we have had an instance where an LEA didn't get their local indicator submitted. They missed the deadline, and they were actually then able to share a link back in the optional narrative to their local indicators that they hosted locally. So that's just something, hopefully that doesn't happen, but you can use that optional narrative box for a lot of things. And now I will think I turn it back over to Hillary. Oh, last one, sorry. I mentioned this before. This is actually the measuring priority one as relates specifically to the local indicators. And I mentioned this can be a tricky one for the LCAP because you've got a little more flexibility with the LCAP in terms of what you're identifying for effectiveness of teachers, or fully assigned teachers, I should say. But for priority one on the local indicators, very specifically, you have to use the teacher assignment monitoring data. And that's because it's automatically populated on the dashboard for you. So you don't have to enter the data. What gets tricky is the sharing of the local indicators with your governing board, right? So you have to share it at the same meeting as the LCAP. And as I mentioned earlier, so far we haven't had this TAMO data published prior to July 1st. So you're kind of left with a couple different options. And this is a bit of a change, so I want to emphasize it because the CDE has said you have two options now. In the past, they were saying, tell your board the data is not available yet, and then share it with them at the first available option. This year, they said something very, very different, and I want to make sure people understand that at the time of publishing your or sharing your local indicators in conjunction with the approval of your LCAP, you can share the existing data that's available on DataQuest, the TAMO data that's already been published. It's going to be old data, but you can share that data as your local indicator, the 23-24 data, and that would suffice. Or you can say the 24-25 data, which will be appearing on the dashboard, has yet to be published, and we will share it with you as soon as it's published. And the expectation is you'll share that at the first available governing board meeting upon its publication. You'll also share that as a non-consent item. An alternative is to do a hybrid, share the 23-24, and as soon as that new data is available, you share that as well, again, sharing in a non-consent item. So that's the change this year. So you have a little more flexibility. If you feel uncomfortable just sending it, keeping that box blank when you're sharing that data with your governing board, understandable. Put in the 23-24 data, and if you so desire, come back and share the 24-25 data. And now I'll hand it back over to Hillary.
Righty. Thank you, Evan. We're going to talk a little bit about measuring priority 2, the implementation of state standards. And so LEAs have two options for reporting their progress on the implementation of state standards. They can either provide a narrative summary or complete a reflection tool. In the narrative box on the dashboard, LEAs can identify the locally selected measures or tools an LEA is using to track its progress in implementing the state academic standards adopted by the state board. They can briefly describe why they chose the selected measures or tools and summarize their progress as it relates to implementation. Conversely, the reflection tool leverages a 5-point rubric ranging from the exploration and research phase to full implementation and sustainability. The reflection tool allows districts to determine progress being made towards standards implementation as it relates to professional learning, instructional materials, improving and delivering of instruction, implementation and other adopted academic standards, and supports for teachers and administration. This slide provides not only the adopted content standards, but also a list of sample measures or artifacts that can support determining progress levels. As you can see, we've included a wide range of sample measures from assessments such as CASP to interim IABs to instructional rounds we have on here or observations where evidence of specific standards implementation was observed. Moving along, family engagement, as we all know, is an essential strategy for building pathways to college and career readiness for all students, and it is an essential component of a systems approach to improving outcomes for all students. More than 30 years of research has shown that family engagement can lead to improved student outcomes. The LCFF legislation recognized the importance of family engagement by requiring LEAs to address priority 3 within the LCAP. The self-reflection tool for this priority is organized into 3 sections: building relationships between school staff and families, building partnerships for student outcomes, and lastly, seeking input for decision making. Based on an evaluation, the data including educational partner input, an LEA uses this self-reflection tool to report its progress, success, and areas of need related to family engagement policies, programs, and practices. This tool will enable an LEA to engage in continuous improvement and determine next steps to make improvements in areas identified. The results of the progress should be used to inform the LCAP and its development process, including assessing prior year's goals, actions, and services, and in modifying future goals, actions, and services. On this slide, we've identified several sample measures that range from parent surveys such as the California School Parent Survey to WASC focus groups as evidence of parent and family engagement. On this slide, the initial design of the local control funding formula recognized the critical role that positive school conditions and climate play in advancing student performance and equity. This recognition is grounded in research-based demonstrating that a positive school climate directly impacts indicators of success, such as increased teacher retention, lower dropout rates, decreased incidence of violence, and higher student achievement. In order to support comprehensive planning, LEAs need to access current data. The measurement of school climate provides LEAs with critical data that can be used to track progress of school climate for purposes of continuous improvement and the ability to identify needs and implement changes to address these needs. If you recall, in 2024, the self-reflection tool for Priority 6 was revised, and as a reminder, requires local educational agencies to administer a local climate survey on an annual basis. This survey must capture a valid measure of student perceptions of school safety and connectedness in at least one grade within each grade span the LEA serves, and at a minimum, report disaggregated data by student groups identified in California Ed Code Section 52052 when such data is available as part of the local school climate survey. Based on analysis of this data, local data included in the local climate survey data, LEAs are required to address 3 prompts associated with data disaggregation when available, key learnings including identified needs and areas of strength determined through the analysis of that data, and any changes to existing plans, policies, or procedures that came from these key learnings. On this slide, some sample measures of evidence that support this priority can include student school climate surveys, such as the California Healthy Kids Survey, and input from parent advisory groups, such as school site council or English language advisory councils, or the district language advisory committees. As we move along, measuring priority 7, access to a broad course of study. Study reports to the extent to which all students have access to and are enrolled in a broad course of study within 4 different narrative prompts. These prompts initially ask for data analysis around grade spans, unduplicated student groups, and individuals with exceptional needs being served. As you can see on this slide, we've made a distinction between a broad course of study between grades 1st through 6 and 7 through 12 per ed code. Some suggested examples of data here can include enrollment in courses or programs such as advanced placement, dual enrollment, AVID, CTE, IB, VAPA, and other courses. Additionally, the percentage of students on track to graduation and/or college and career readiness as measured by your student information system tracking tools. Fulfillment of course requests or similar measures are also viable examples of data to consider including. Many metrics used to identify access to a broad course of study, priority 7, have corresponding outcomes that can be included in the LCAP among other pupil outcomes for priority 8. On this slide, we've identified some possible measures such as State Seal of Biliteracy from DataQuest or Dashboard Additional Reports, the College Career Measures Only Report, Golden State Seal Merit Diploma from DataQuest, the 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate outcomes, college credit courses completed from the Dashboard Additional Reports, the College Career Level and Measures Report, National Merit Scholars, CTE internships, and certifications, as you can see. And as we wrap up this section, here's that updated and handy-dandy version of our local indicator guidance and measurement tool we've created as a supplement to the CDE's local indicator quick guide. It provides a summary of each local indicator's process, along with the suggested data sources that you've seen on the past slides. It's coupled with some questions to enhance your analysis and key elements to consider adding to your narratives, and it's linked here for your convenience. Thank you for your time. I'm going to hand it over to Abrar in the Business Advisory Services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so all the fiscal section on LCAP is pretty much the same. Let's just start with the fiscal update, which is something new. So here is the first thing. I think what happened in like first instance of not submitting LCAP on time, which is on or before July 1st, right? I think that happens, very first instance happened in summer of 2024. And because of that, now this requirement, which says that this new requirement regarding the LCAP adoption, starting with the annual audit for 2025, auditors will verify the LEA adoption, its LCAP on or before July 1st. So this is the reason for that is, so now you can understand that there's going to be a penalty, fiscal penalty equal to 20% of the LEA's second principal apportionment. And this penalty will be increased by 1% for each additional business day after July 1st. And so you can understand that what kind of there is a heavy penalties here. Just to give you an example that if, and using, there is a calculator, which you will see in the next slide, but using that calculator, we just approximately just telling you, if you, for example, if you submit by August 1st, the penalty will go from 20% to 50%, just to give you an idea. So what we're saying, we know we don't do that, and fortunately that's a good thing, but I think the main purpose is to communicate with the educational partners and your governing board, so you can follow your timelines and also approved and adopt LCAP on July 1st or before July 1st. So if you want to know more about the calculation, how to calculate penalty, there is a calculator on CDA site. Right here is the link to that. So you can understand, you can see what kind of penalties are, going to be. Again, this is just to communicate. And as I said, so everyone understand what kind of penalties they will be facing if they do not adopt on or July 1st. So let's go to the next slide. This is, as I said, that's something new. Now we're going over the same actions tables again, which we have done in the previous years. So we quickly go over what we have is the same number of actions tables for this coming year, 2026-27, which total plan expenditure table, contributing action table. And the next three tables are for the current year, which is 2025-26, and which include annual update, contributing action table for current year, and then also to calculate LCFF carryover. Okay, next slide, please. So action table, as you can see in this action table, everything is reflected here. The main one is like your MPP percentage, which actually you will, and we will talk about more in the next one, but this also reflect here is your MPP percentage. And if there is, which is like in this example, you can see 39.81, which you actually getting the information or data from your LCFF calculator. And if there is any carryover, this will also be reflected here too. And then in the last column, you will have the total percentage to meet MPP. And in this case, it still is 39.81 because there is no carryover. So next slide, please. Okay. So this table is a contributing action table. And that's where, as you can see here, so highlighted in yellow, this is the MPP percentage. You can see down there is a LCFF calculator and showing your percentage for 26-27. That's what you will have here. And then if there is, and the 42.25, that's what, if let's say you're going over your minimum, in this case, this is very important. You need to meet at least, as I said, in this case is like 39.81. You can go over that, that's good, but you need to meet the minimum. So plan percentage must be equal to or greater than the total percentage. So in this case, you need to meet at least 39.81, and is over, then that's good. It's up to you, but as need to meet at least the minimum. Next slide, please. Okay. So those two, previous one we did was for the for coming year. So now three tables we will be going over is more like an update for the current year, 2025-26. So first one is your annual update tables. So what's so important here, this is what you need to pay attention, that action and plan expenditures must correspond with the LEA approved LCAP. And the other one is the total estimated actual expenditure must be as of June 30, 30, 2026. And this include all funding sources, with LCFF funding, federal fund, other funds, and other local funds. Okay. And another important point here is, this is very important, that let's say if you implemented some goal and action and in your LCAP, the funding source you use, for example, is state fund, but you use any other fund, you still need to include the total expenditure, even though you did not use the fund you identify here, but you implemented and spend money, you need to show the total amount there. I hope I'm clear here. This is the main point in this table. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the contributing action table, the information you will be getting from your LCFF calculator. Again, this is the very first box you see. That's the base amount. You go back your LCFF calculator, and in a summary tab, there will be the amount, your base amount, grant amount, your supplemental and concentration amount, and the percentage. So this you will update that information, and then you will make sure that the amount. The more important one is that estimated expenditures are very close to as possible as of June 30th you can, because this will impact your additional what I'm trying to say, that estimated actual, if it's close, then your reporting will be very close, and you may not need to, if there is no carryover or carryover, in either case, like underreported or overreported, your LCAP will be adjusted in the next year. So it's better to have a very close estimated expenditures for this year as of June 30th, 2026. And all this data will be coming from is auto-populated. You will get it, but you need to look at it if you're using another system, that your base grant and the percentage is the same. Next slide, please. Okay. So what we're trying to make another point here, and these are the same two slides which we used earlier. What we're saying, that when you completing these tables, make sure that the annual update table and the contributing action annual update table, for example, I use this example, you very first one on your annual update table, the first amount, estimated actual expenditure, showing 8.29560, 8.2 million. And if you go down the second table, which is contributing action annual update table, you see is the same amount showing there. So which means is same amount, which is fine. That's what was the reported in your annual update, and is what you're showing that LCFF, you use it. So it means that LCFF was, you use this LCFF funds for this purpose. So amount is the same, that's okay. And that's why I put it okay. The next amount, if you look at it, is a 4.098638. So if you look at down the table, contributing action table, the amount showing 4 million, which is less than what's the total expenditure 4.09 is. That means is okay, because your total expenditure, you may have some other sources other than LCFF, state funding, federal funding, or whatever. And the third one, this is the purpose to show that here you're showing your total expenditure as 5.3 million, but here is 5.7 million, which is more. It doesn't make sense, because in contributing action is just LCFF, while annual update, you have all kind of sources, funding source, federal, state, local. So it doesn't. So you need to make sure, reconcile and check that this amount either equal or less than your total expenditure. And that's the main point here I was trying to make. I hope I was clear on this one. If you do that, that was the whole purpose, to show this particular slide and comparing these two action tables here. Next slide, please. Okay. This is the one for me. That's when I really LCFF carryover table, and that's why I have LCFF carryover table. Also, the increase and improve services, foster youth, and then the calculator here. You need to make sure that you updating, because when you have your adopted budget, your estimated actual base grant may be different. Now you should have an updated LCFF calculator, which you should be able to get from your fiscal team. And this will be updated, by the way. LCFF calculator will have after the May revised budget, governor's budget. So this will be updated, and at that time you will be able to get the more updated information. So the base grant, make sure you have updated base grant, the percentage, and also based on that information, your carryover will change. Again, if remember, we were talking about as close as possible your estimated actual expenditure. That's where it will make the difference. If you underreport or overreport, it will tell you will it have a carryover or no carryover. If you let's say you overstated your actual expenditure, and later on you find out that there actually should be underspend, it will create some carryover. And if you already understated, it may create carryover. I think what I'm trying to say again, this carryover, this table will impact your increase and improve services, because your carryover MPP will increase or remain just for this year. If there is no carryover, your MPP, whatever is reflected for this year, what you will be targeting to meet for the coming year. So this calculation is the first, usually I try to do it, because this way, when you're developing your actions and making sure that you meeting your MPP requirement, and again, having this side by side, you can see is connecting even when you completing your increase and improve services template there. It will tell you that what MPP, minimum MPP you needed if there is a carryover. So that's what this LCFF carryover table it does, because then this carryover will also reflect in your current year contributing action and the plan expenditures reflected in the first table. So this is pretty much, as I said, everything is the same. Just before I hand over to Sean, this is just to make sure that we have clear understanding about the total estimated actual expenditure. So it says, when completing the annual update table, include all funds used for the actions in the estimated actual expenditures column, even if they are not LCFF funds. Is it true or false? So I hope that now we know it should be true, because we're saying that as long as you completed that action and goal, let's say you swap funds from LCFF to state fund or vice versa, then you need to need to include that expenditures. So as long as we have this understanding, I think we should be okay. As I said, most of these tables are the same, what we use in the prior years, and except these two that update for the meeting the requirement, the meeting adopt and approve the budget by July 1st, we should be okay. So now I will hand over to Sean for budget overview for parents.
Thank you, Abrar. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk about the budget overview for parents, and I'm going to walk us through how to fill it out properly. If you could go to the next slide, please. So, Education Code does require us to fill out the LCFF budget overview for parents. We have to do this in conjunction with the LCAP by July 1st of every year. This is basically an executive summary document that includes financial information. So it's a 3-page document. It includes your projected revenue by funding source, your budgeted expenditures, and it also has some charts and data that has to do with your prior year expenditures for high needs students, which is also at this point in time what we're calling our current year. So it's important to know that the budget overview for parents is a separate document from your LCAP. It is prepared in conjunction with, and it's based on, and I know this is in another slide, it's based on the May revise. And so it's important to make sure that as you're going through the iterative process of developing your budget, that the fiscal folks are doing, and the LCAP that you're all doing, that you come back to this one because there are lots of revisions made as you're going through the process. You want to make sure and come back to this one kind of toward the end and make sure it's got the latest, most up-to-date information. So let's go on to the next slide. This is a 5-page workbook. It's got this one that's showing right here is just the title page, not a whole lot of information there, except where to get more information about the budget overview for parents, when it was last updated. There is a link there. And again, you are required to do this. It hasn't changed at all from last year. So for those of you that are veterans and have done this a few times, this should be pretty familiar for you. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so data input. This is one of the main tabs where we're going to go in and we're going to put in all the required information that's then going to populate those template pages. We've crosswalked how to fill out that information. So on the left-hand side, you're seeing the data input page from the BOP. And in red letters, you're going to see the exact references to where you get that information. You do need, and this is all information that comes from the following source documents. So it's going to be from you're going to get a lot of data from the budget form 1 for 26-27. So that's the adopted budget side that your fiscal services folks are working on. You're going to get some information from the FCMAT LCFF calculator that Abrar already mentioned. It does have to be based on the May revise. Just to remind everybody, the May revise comes out in the middle of May. It's the latest and greatest information from the governor that has to be used to develop the budget and the LCAP numbers. Again, it comes out mid-May, but then once it's all the information is digested, made available to your fiscal folks, that could be late May. So you're in those final stages of preparing everything. I know it gets a little wild and crazy during that time, just trying to polish everything off, make sure everything is correct. You're getting data from the 26-27 planned expenditure tables in the LCAP, the 26-27 contributing actions tables in the LCAP, and the 25-26 contributing actions annual update table. So those last three are all from the LCAP pages. Let's go on to the next slide, and we'll get into the specifics of where you're getting that information. So in in the yellow box there, you're seeing your different revenue sources. So you're seeing your total LCFF funds, you're seeing your supplemental and concentration funds, your state funds, local funds, federal funds, and your total projected revenue. So that is going to tie into the bottom screenshot that is just a little screen grab from the 26-27 adopted budget. We call it Form 1. And I know it's a little bit small to see, but you're going to see where you see A, E, C, D, and F. That's going to be your LCFF revenue, federal revenue, other state revenue, local revenue, and your total revenue. So those need to match. That second line in the yellow box about your supplemental and concentration grant funding, that is pulled from the FCMAT calculator. Okay. I know most of you are using the FCMAT calculator. Not everybody's using the FCMAT calculator. If you're using something else, that reference may not apply to you. The other thing I wanted to say about the FCMAT calculator is that you'll see that in that reference in red lettering where it says LCFF supplemental and concentration grant, we give you the reference. It says FCMAT, that's for the calculator. It's on the summary tab, column E, line 64. That's what's in the little red box in that middle screenshot. Just a little disclaimer though, that calculator is controlled by FCMAT when they put out new versions, and they'll put out a new one for the May revise. Sometimes they add rows and they shift things around a little bit. It's possible when the calculator comes out, it may not be line 64, but there is a box and it always kind of looks the same right there in the middle. There's that box that says LCAP percentage to increase or improve services calculations. So that box is always there. That is giving you the required information that you need for the LCAP. So the rows may shift around a little bit, but that section should always be the same, and it'll be right around that same row there. So let's go on to the next screenshot, and we'll talk about expenditures. So we're grabbing our expenditures from the LCAP pages, and we're also grabbing total expenditures from Form 1 again. And so the first row, total budgeted general fund expenditures, that's going to come from Form 1. So it's that screen grab on the left. It's that box way down there that says total expenditures. That's where you're going to get that. Total budgeted expenditures in the LCAP, that is going to come from your 26-27 total planned expenditures table. It's going to be that field called total funds. And then your total budgeted expenditures for high needs students in the LCAP is going to come from the 26-27 contributing actions table. And that one is called the total planned contributing expenditures. So you see how in red we have given you the exact field. Okay. Expenditures not in the LCAP, that is just an auto-calculated field that's right there in the budget overview for parents. Let's go to the next slide, please. And then the last couple fields on the data input side are going to be your total budgeted expenditures for high need students in the LCAP. These are going to come from the 25-26 contributing actions annual update table. And it's going to be these two columns here. So it's going to be your total planned contributing expenditures and then your total estimated actuals for contributing actions. So that is how you fill the data input tab. The next tab that you would fill out is going to be your narrative responses. There's one required narrative response, and that is you do have to briefly explain your general fund expenditures that are not included in the LCAP. So for example, and I'm just grabbing numbers from my head, your total general fund for a larger district might be $300 million. but you may only have $200 million of expenditures in your LCAP. So you have to briefly explain what that $100 million difference is between what's in your LCAP and what's not in your LCAP for the general fund. And that's all over the place. I know some districts have almost the entire general fund in the LCAP, explained in the LCAP, and some have a significantly smaller fraction. So you do have to explain that. Again, it's a brief explanation. There are two conditional explanations that you only have to provide narrative if you're prompted to do so. So the first one is basically if your total budgeted expenditures for high needs students for 26-27 is less than what you're getting in supplemental and concentration funding. So let's say you're getting $70 million in supplemental and concentration funding, but your plan is for only $60 million, you'd have to explain that. I'm not even sure we would approve that, but that does get prompted if you hit that condition. Again, if you're not prompted, you don't have to fill it out. And then the last conditional responses is basically for the 25-26 year, if your actual expenditures for high need students are less than your total budgeted expenditures for high need students. So in other words, your actuals, what you ended up spending is less than what you planned. You have to explain that. You have to put in some explanation there as well. Again, one required response, two conditional responses on that slide. Let's go to the next slide. And this is a sample of what it looks like when you're done. And this is the only page. This is the template page, the template tab within the Excel workbook. Looks real nice with these nice charts in there. And again, brief explanations. That is the only piece that has to go with your 26-27 LCAP. So again, as you are putting in those final touches to your LCAP, making sure things are aligned with your budget, don't forget about making those revisions in the budget overview for parents. If you do, we will catch it because we go through and we make sure all your documents align when we do our pre-review process. Make sure you get into our pre-review process for your LCAP. And I think that's it. Can you go to the next slide? Yep, that's it for me. So I'm going to hand it off back to ASM.
Well, thank you, Sean. And in the following slides, we'll go over the LCAP development timeline and the approval process for school districts. Okay, so we all know that there are many components that go into the LCAP development, and it begins in the fall and it moves through the rest of the school year. So to support you in planning and developing the 26-27 LCAP, we'd like to share a resource on this slide. The link to this document is shown at the bottom of the slide and can also be found on our LCAP Canvas page. This LCAP timeline details the actions and the tasks to be completed in the 25-26 school year to help guide the development process of the 26-27 LCAP. And although the fall of 2025 has come and gone, be sure to take a look at the tasks nonetheless. Now, currently, as noted by the "You Are Here" icon, we are in the winter-spring season of the development phase. And peeking in and just around the corner are the tasks for spring that lead up to the board adoption of the LCAP. These screenshots serve as a reminder that the development of the LCAP is a process that takes time, lots of planning, reflection, and involves your educational partners all along the way. The intent of this document is to offer you a guide with steps to take, key processes to implement, and reflective questions to consider so that your LCAP is comprehensive, meaningful, and compliant. Next slide. And so once the LCAP has been developed with all the required components, including consultation with educational partners and the SELPA, there are required steps that school districts must adhere to leading up to the submission of the adopted LCAP to the County Office of Education. And the steps on this page also apply to charter schools using their LCAP as their SIPSA. So to begin, the superintendent shall present the 26-27 completed LCAP draft to the Parent Advisory Committee for review and opportunity to comment. A completed draft includes the BOP and the action tables. The 26-27 LCAP draft is also presented to the English Learner Parent Advisory Committee as applicable for your district for review and comments. The complete LCAP draft is also presented to the Student Advisory Committee as applicable. As a reminder, only LEAs with students in middle or high school must meet this requirement. This requirement can also be met if at least 2 students are members of the Parent Advisory Committee in lieu of a Student Advisory Committee. The superintendent will respond to all comments from the PAC and the ELPAC and SAC as applicable in written form. Next, the LEA will notify members of the public in its community of the opportunity to view the complete LCAP draft. The community must have an opportunity to submit written comments regarding the expenditures and actions in the LCAP to the LEA. Continuing on, the superintendent will review school plans as applicable to ensure that strategies and actions in the SIPSAs are consistent with the 26-27 LCAP draft. And once these steps have been completed, you're in the home stretch. LEAs will hold at least one public hearing of the 26-27 LCAP in order to solicit recommendations and comments from the public regarding specific actions and expenditures proposed in the LCAP. This public hearing will be on the same day as the public hearing for the proposed 26-27 budget. The LCAP and budget are like salt and pepper. These two, they always go together. And lastly, at a public meeting held after, but not on the same day as the public hearing, the governing board of the school district shall adopt the budget and the LCAP for the 26-27 school year. Now, charter schools and charter schools only may hold the public hearing and the adoption of the LCAP and budget at the same public meeting. Now, to add a little bit more flavor, at the same meeting as the LCAP and budget will be adopted, local indicator results must also be presented to the board or governing body. These are the 3 amigos, your salt, your pepper, and your hot sauce: LCAP, budget, and local indicators. And once adopted, all LEAs, school districts, and charter schools are to upload the adopted LCAP to LACO's eLCAP system. School districts will upload no later than 5 days after adoption, and charter schools will submit to the eLCAP system no later than July 1st. Specific regulations for charter schools regarding this process can be found in Ed Code 47604.33 or 47606.5, and for school districts in Ed Code 52062. So now that your LCAP is adopted, school districts enter their approval phase. Statute provides this requirement and timeline for LCAP approval. Now, as previously mentioned, the LCAP must be adopted by the local governing board on or before July 1st. Within 5 calendar days of adoption, which does include weekends and holidays, submit the adopted LCAP to LACO via the eLCAP system. It is at this time that the formal review and approval process begins for school districts. Between the time the LCAP is officially submitted and through the end of July, school districts' LCAPs are thoroughly reviewed. When necessary, on or before August 15th, the County Office of Education will request, in writing, clarification of contents of a school district's LCAP. Within 15 days of receipt of this clarification letter, the district shall respond in writing to the COE regarding these requests. Within 15 days of receiving the response from the district, the County Office of Education may provide recommendations in writing for amendments to the LCAP. The district must then consider the recommendations in a public meeting within 15 days of receiving them from the County Office of Ed. If a school district LCAP and budget are approved by the County Office of Education by the end of August or early September, an approval letter will be sent to the governing board of a school district on or before September 15th. It is important to note that the district's budget cannot be approved until the LCAP is approved. The deadline for the county office to approve school district LCAPs is October 8th. Next slide. And almost. Perfect. When the County Office of Education formally reviews the LCAP, there are 4 criteria that must be met for approval. 1, the LEA has adhered to the State Board of Education adopted template and has followed all instructions for completing the template. Number 2, the LEA budget for the upcoming fiscal year includes expenditures that are sufficient to implement the actions in the LCAP. And 3, the LEA has demonstrated how it is meeting its requirement to increase or improve services for students who are low income, English learners, and foster youth. And finally, the LEA has made the required calculations to determine whether there is a carryover requirement in supplemental and concentration funds for unduplicated pupils and describes the planned uses in the LCAP meeting that minimum proportionality percentage, also referred to as MPP. So once again, next slide. Once again, now entering its 5th year, the pre-review process offers school districts an opportunity to ensure that their LCAP team is on track to address all legal requirements in the LCAP prior to board adoption. We appreciate the continued positive feedback we receive from school districts about the pre-review process, and we are grateful for our partnerships with you. Thus, once again, we have offered the opportunity for school districts to participate in a pre-review process before the official LCAP submission. LCAP reviewers have already reached out and met with each of their respective school districts. This process continues until board adoption, as we are here to support you through the duration of the LCAP development. This closes out the timeline information, and up next is Rachel.
Thank you, Anita, and hello, everyone. So the next few slides will cover how to submit your completed LCAP to LAKEGO. So as a reminder, all school districts and charter schools in LA County will submit their 2026-27 LCAP using the LAKEGO eLCAP system. And so as Anita mentioned, for school districts, it must be submitted within 5 days of adoption. And for charter schools, it must be submitted on or before July 1st. Now, if your LEA does not use the LAKEGO eLCAP system to develop your LCAP, then you'll just be uploading a PDF of your complete LCAP, which includes the budget overview for parents, the 2026-27 LCAP, the action tables, and the LCAP instructions. And so this PDF that gets uploaded to the system, it should be one single file with all of those components that I indicated and that you can see on this slide in that specific order. Now, for LEAs that do use our eLCAP system to develop the LCAP, in the next section, we'll actually be going over the steps to roll over your 25-26 plan, as well as provide a brief walkthrough of some of the key sections in the eLCAP system. But first, for non-ELCAP users, we just wanted to provide a quick overview of the steps to upload and submit a PDF of your completed LCAP. And so first, you're going to start off by logging into the ELCAP system, or if you don't already have an account, then you would just need to register as a new user at elcap.laco.edu. And so once you're logged into the system, you'll click on Manage Plans, which you can see is located on the left menu bar under LCAP. And then on the next screen, you'll select the orange button that says Add New Plan. And so you can see this here on the screen in step 3. Now, once you add a new plan, this title page that you see in step 4, this will pop up. And then you'll need to complete the required fields on this page. And so that includes the plan title and year, the date of adoption, the LEA type and name, as well as the LEA contact information. And so just as a reminder for plan year, be sure to select the 26-27. And then at the bottom of the title page, you can see where you will upload the PDF file of your complete LCAP. And so remember that the system, it'll only allow you to upload one file. So it's important to ensure that all of the LCAP components are included in the correct order as previously mentioned. And then at the bottom of the title page, you'll need to click on the box that says, do you want to use the PDF plan upload? And this will allow you to choose your file to upload. Once you've selected your file, you'll then click on the green cloud button to upload the file. And then once that upload completes and you've confirmed the file name replaces that Choose File button, you'll need to remember to click the Save button. And then the final step is to submit the plan. So next you would need to go back to your plan index, and that's where you'll see that orange Submit button at the top of the screen. And so you'll click this button to officially submit your plan to LACO. Okay, so this last section of today's workshop, it's only applicable to LEAs that use the LACO ELCAP system to develop their LCAP. So for those of you who don't use the ELCAP system to develop your LCAP, so for example, you might use document tracking services or something else, we want to thank you for joining us today and know that the LACO team is here to support you. So please be sure to fill out the evaluation before you go, and I believe the link will be dropped in the chat. And for the next section, again, we're going to provide a brief overview of the ELCAP system, including how to roll over your plan for 26-27. So if your LEA used the ELCAP system to develop the 25-26 LCAP, you'll be able to roll over relevant information into the 26-27 plan. And so this includes the general information prompt in the plan summary section. It also includes the 2025-26 goals, metrics, all of your baselines, year 1 outcomes, and targets for year 3, and then also all actions in the goals and actions section. It will also roll over in the increased and improved services section, the LEA-wide, school-wide actions prompt, the limited actions prompt, and then also the additional concentration grant funding prompt. Additionally, the data for the 2025-26 annual update table, the 25-26 contributing actions annual update table, and then also the 25-26 LCFF carryover table will roll over. So these next few slides provide a quick overview of the steps to roll over the plan. Again, it's for those LEAs that use the ELCAP system to develop the 25-26 LCAP. So first you would need to log into the ELCAP system, or again, if you don't have an account, then you would need to register as a new user. And if you're a new user, you will also need to be added as a user to the approved 25-26 plan in order to complete the rollover process. And so if there's not someone in your district who can add you to the approved 25-26 plan, you can contact your LCAP coordinator for assistance with this process. And once you're in the system, you'll click on the Manage Plans on the left menu bar under LCAP, and then you'll need to select the approved 25-26 plan. So what you see on this screen, actually, if we could go back. Thank you. What you see on this screen, it will vary by user depending on how many drafts were created in the ELCAP system. But you should only see one approved plan for the 2025-26 year. And so you would confirm this by looking at the third column, which indicates the plan year, and then also the last column, which shows the status. And once you've found the approved 25-26 plan, you would then click on the plan title. Okay, next slide. So once you've selected the approved 25-26 plan, you'll see this screen that shows the plan index of your approved 25-26 LCAP. At the top of the screen, you'll see the rollover button. And so you would just click on this button to roll over the plan. And then after clicking the rollover button, you should see a message in green stating that the plan rolled over successfully. You will then need to go back to the Manage Plans section to find the rolled over plan. And again, you can find the Manage Plans tab on the left menu bar, as you can see here in the screenshot. And in the Manage Plans section, the rolled over plan will have the word rollover, as well as the date and time of the rollover in the plan title. And the status will now be draft, as you can see in the example on the screen. And so remember to edit the plan title so that you remove that word rollover as well as the date and time. And you can do this in that title page section of the plan index. Now, once you click on the rolled over plan, you will see the plan index as shown here in this screenshot. And so the plan index features all of the sections of the LCAP, and it allows you to navigate through the various sections as you're developing the plan. You will need to go into each section to enter the information that was not rolled over. You'll also want to review the sections that were rolled over, just in case any edits are needed. And then there are also some sections in the plan index, which you can see have the word preview. And so these sections, they're read-only, and they allow you to preview certain sections of the plan, such as the goals and the action tables. And so the data for the preview sections, this data is entered in the data entry for the 25-26 action tables, or also in the data entry for the 26-27 goals, actions, and budget section. Okay, next slide. So in the plan index, you will see a link to the budget overview for parents upload. And the budget overview for parents, also known as the BOP or BOP, again, it's part of the LCAP, but it's not completed within the ELCAP system. So the BOP will be completed using the CDE template, and then it will need to be uploaded to the ELCAP system. Only the template tab of the BOP should be uploaded. So prior to uploading, you will need to convert the template tab into a PDF. And then to upload a PDF file, you would just click on the Choose File button to select the PDF, then click the green cloud button to upload the file. And then after you do this, a pop-up will appear that shows the progress of the upload. Once that upload completes, you'll see that the file name will replace that Choose File button. Okay, so here we see a screenshot of the data entry for the 2025-26 action table section. And so this is where LEAs will enter the data for the annual update table, the contributing actions annual update table, and the LCFF carryover table. And so when you click on this section, you will see these three tabs across the top of the page, one for each of those 25-26 tables that require data entry. And so most of the data in these tables is either rolled over from the 2025-26 LCAP or it's auto-populated based on the data entered. But there are a few fields where data does need to be entered, and so we'll review those fields in the next few slides. So the first tab is for the 2025-26 annual update table. And on this page, you will see all of the actions that were included in the 25-26 LCAP, as well as the total planned expenditures for each action. And so this is where you'll enter the estimated actual expenditures for each action. And so you would just click on the pencil icon to enter an amount, and then click on the save icon after entering each amount. And then you'll notice as you enter and save the estimated actual expenditures for each action, that amount will be added to the total amount that's indicated at the top of the screen. And then again, as a reminder, that estimated actual expenditures that need to be entered, these are the estimated costs for each action as of June 30th, 2026. So the next tab that we see is the 2025-26 Contributing Actions Annual Update Table. And on this screen, you will see all of the contributing actions that were included in the 25-26 LCAP. And then again, here's where you will enter the estimated actual LCFF supplemental and/or concentration grant amount for the 25-26 year. Also, the estimated actual expenditure of LCFF funds for each contributing action included in the 25-26 LCAP, and then, if applicable, the estimated actual percentage of improved services. And then again, these are the estimated actual expenditures for each contributing action, which are the estimated cost as of June 30th, 2026. And so to enter these amounts, again, you'll just click on that pencil icon to open the fields, and then be sure to click on the save icon after entering each amount. And one important thing to remember is that for the estimated actual expenditure amount for each contributing action, it's only asking for LCFF funds here. So if you have a contributing action that includes LCFF funds, as well as another funding source, such as federal funds, you must only include the LCFF funds here. Another thing to note is that for the estimated actual percentage of improved services, you will only be able to enter a percentage if the estimated actual expenditures for the action is $0. The system will not allow you to enter a percentage if there is an amount over $0. And then the other fields shown in this table, again, they're either auto-populated from the 25-26 plan, or they're auto-calculated based on the data entered. The third tab is for the 2025-26 LCFF carryover table. And so this table, it will calculate the LCFF carryover, if any, that will be required to be carried over from the 25-26 LCAP year into the 26-27 plan. And so most of the information in this table is auto-populated or auto-calculated. However, there's one field that LEAs will need to input. So LEAs will need to enter the estimated actual LCFF base grant dollar amount. And so this is the total amount of LCFF funding the LEA estimates it will receive for the current school year, so for 25-26. And so this amount, it also excludes the supplemental and concentration grants and add-ons for the Targeted Instructional Improvement Grant Program and the Home to School Transportation Program. And so to enter this amount, again, you just click on that pencil icon to open the field, and then click on the save icon after entering the amount. So here we see a screenshot of the data entry for the 2026-27 goals, actions, and budget, which includes the data entry tabs for the goals, the measuring and reporting results, the goal analysis, actions, and then also the budget summary. And so as previously mentioned, your 25-26 goals which includes the type of goal, the state priorities addressed by the goal, your goal description, and goal explanation. All of that information will be rolled over. And so if you need to edit a goal that was rolled over, you would just click on that pencil icon next to the goal. If you need to delete a goal, you would just click on the trash can icon. And then you can also add a new goal by clicking on the Add Goal button. A pop-up will appear, and then it will allow you to enter all of the goal information. So again, be sure to click that Save button after entering information for each goal added, or if you're editing an existing goal. So next we see the Measuring and Reporting Results tab. And so again, all of your metrics from the 25-26 LCAP will roll over. And so here you will need to enter the year 2 outcome data as well as the current difference from baseline for each metric rolled over in each goal. And then again, you would just click on that pencil icon to enter the data. The goal drop-down at the top of that first screenshot, this will allow you to toggle between each goal. And then if you need to add a new metric, you would just click on the Add button. And then a pop-up, it'll appear allowing you to enter the metric, the baseline, and the target for year 3 outcome for that new metric. And then just as a reminder for new metrics, you would leave the year 1 outcome and year 2 outcome and current difference from baseline fields blank, or you can just indicate not applicable. And then again, just be sure to click Save after entering the information for each metric. So next we have the Goal Analysis tab. So here you will respond to the 4 goal analysis prompts for each goal. And then you can see there's a goal drop-down at the top of the screenshot. And again, this will allow you to toggle between each goal. And then again, another reminder, click that Save button after responding to the prompts for each goal. Okay, next we see a screenshot of the Actions tab. And then again, all of your actions from the 25-26 plan, those will roll over. And so the only information from the actions that won't roll over is the budget or expenditure information. So you will need to add this in, and so you can edit each action to add this information. And so to do so, you would click on that pencil icon next to the action number. If you need to delete a rolled over action, you can do so by clicking on that trash can icon. And then if you need to add a new action, you would just click on the Add Action button, and then a pop-up, it'll appear allowing you to enter all of the required information for the action. And then also remember if the action is a contributing action, so contributing to increased or improved services, other fields will appear. And so you can see that in the last screenshot. So next we have the Budget Summary tab. And so this is also within that data entry for the 26-27 goals, actions, and budget. And so this is where LEAs will enter the projected LCFF base grant for 2026-27, as well as the projected LCFF supplemental and/or concentration grant amount for 26-27. The additional fields that you see on this screen, those will be auto-calculated based on information entered here, as well as in other sections of the plan. And so the amounts in lines 1 through 6, those will be populated in the action tables. The last field, line 7, this will display a yes or a no to let LEAs know whether or not the LEA is meeting its required percentage to increase or improve services for the coming school year based on the information entered. And so it's important to note that this field, it will not display anywhere in your actual LCAP. It's just included within our eLCAP system, just as a quick reference for LEAs to let you know whether or not you're meeting your MPP. And so one thing not shown on this slide, this section, it also includes a view-only summary of the actions and funds in the plan. So here we see some screenshots from the plan summary and the comprehensive support and improvement sections. And so the plan summary section, it includes 3 prompts. The response to the first prompt, remember this will roll over from your 25-26 plan. However, the second and third prompts, these will not roll over. And so the first prompt that will roll over, you can edit if you need to. And so you just want to be sure to click the save button after making any edits. The second prompt, this is required to be completed by all LEAs. And then the third prompt, it's only required for LEAs that are eligible for technical assistance or differentiated assistance. The comprehensive support and improvement section, that also includes 3 prompts. However, this section, it's only completed if the LEA has a school or schools identified for CSI. And keep in mind that none of the CSI responses will be rolled over from the 25-26 plan. And then we've also included the list of schools identified for CSI, the link to that list at the bottom of the slide. So next we have the engaging educational partner section. And so nothing in this section will be rolled over from the 25-26 LCAP. So to add an educational partner, you would just click on the Add New Partner button, and then a pop-up will appear allowing you to enter the applicable educational partner and a description of the engagement process used by the LEA. Remember for this section to include all of the required groups that the LEA must consult with when developing the LCAP. Also not shown on the slide, there is a narrative response box to respond to the second prompt in this section. And so be sure to hit the save button in the pop-up after entering the educational partner and engagement process description, as well as the response to the second prompt. So here we see a screenshot of the first part of the increased or improved services section. And for the fields shown on the slide, there's only one that requires data entry. So LEAs will need to enter that projected additional 15% LCFF concentration grant amount for the 26-27 school year. And so the other fields that are shown here will not need to be entered, so these will be automatically populated from data entered in other sections of the ELCAP system. Next slide. So continuing with the increased or improved services, here we see screenshots of the prompt for the LEA-wide and school-wide actions, as well as the prompt for the limited actions. And so all of the information from your 25-26 LCAP will roll over for both of these prompts or tables. And so if you need to edit any of those rolled over descriptions, again, you'll just click on that pencil icon. And if any of the descriptions need to be removed, you can just click on the trash can icon to delete those descriptions. If you need to add new descriptions, then you would just click on the Add Descriptions button, and then a pop-up will appear to enter the required information. And you would do the same thing for the limited actions. So it's the same process of just clicking on that Add Descriptions button. Now there's an additional prompt in the limited action section that is not shown on the slide. However, this prompt, it only applies to limited actions without funding that include a planned percentage of improved services. And so this prompt will most likely not apply to most LEAs. And then also for your reference, above each section, you'll see a list of your LEA-wide, school-wide, and/or limited actions so that you can be sure each action is addressed within the applicable prompt. In addition to the prompts on the previous slide, the increased or improved services section, it also includes a prompt related to the additional concentration grant funding and a staff to student ratio table that must be completed if applicable to your LEA. Now, if your LEA does not receive additional concentration grant funding, then this section does not apply. Additionally, single school LEAs such as charter schools are not required to complete the staff to student ratio table. However, if you are a single school LEA that receives the additional concentration grant funds, you do have to complete the prompt. It's just not the table. Also, please note that the response to this prompt, it will be rolled over from the 25-26 plan. However, the staff to student ratios in the table, those will not be rolled over because this information, it must be updated each year to reflect the counts from the first Wednesday in October. So when the plan has been completed and adopted by the local governing board, LEAs will officially submit the plan to LACO by clicking on the orange submit button located in the plan index. And so you can see that here at the top of the screen. For school districts, after the plan is submitted, the status in ELCAP will change from draft to submitted. And then your superintendent will receive an email request to authorize the submission of the plan. Once the superintendent has authorized the submission, you'll see that the status will change to authorized, and then the formal review process will begin. Just as a quick reminder for pre-reviews, please do not submit the plan in ELCAP. Instead, you'll just email the PDF of the draft plan to your assigned LCAP coordinator. Now here, we have the ELCAP user guide. So if you need additional support with using the ELCAP system, we have the user guide available on both the ELCAP system and it's on our Canvas resource page. So to access this guide in the ELCAP system, you would just click on the LCAP instructions in the left menu bar. This will take you to the LCAP resource file screen where you'll be able to access the user guide. And then again, you could also access it on our Canvas page under LACO resources, and we've included the link at the bottom of the slide. Just as a reminder, in addition to the user guide, it's important to also reference the CDE LCAP template instructions to ensure that you're fully addressing the LCAP requirements and the prompts. So remember, the prompts are for the readers and the instructions are for the LCAP writers. So if you're just responding to the prompts on the screen in the ELCAP system, you might not be addressing everything that's required. So that concludes our LCAP Day 2 workshop. A big thank you to our colleagues in the Accountability and Data Literacy Unit and Business Advisory Services for sharing all of the great information on the metrics and the local indicators, action tables, and the budget overview for parents. And then again, thank you all for joining us today. Please be sure to fill out the evaluation. And if there are any additional questions, please leave them in the chat and we'll get the Q&A out as soon as possible. And so thank you all and have a great rest of your day.